Y'all, the streets are whispering again, and baby, this time they're whispering loud. They're saying Diddy did not just have a bad Thanksgiving. He had a full-blown meltdown in Fort Dix. And listen, if the rumors are true, oh, he wasn't giving thanks, he was giving turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, spiritually breakdowns, emotional disturbances, and maybe even a little commissary panic. Because the word going around is that Diddy had to pay his way through Thanksgiving just to be left alone. Now, don't get me wrong, Diddy has always been obsessed with looking like the big man, the big boss, the big dog, the don't talk to me unless you got money type. But Fort Dix, baby Fort Dix, does not care who you walked red carpets with. Fort Dix does not care who you wrote hits for. Fort Dix definitely does not care about your celebrity ego. The inmates supposedly looked at him like, oh, that's Diddy, cute, anyway, run the turkey. And that's where the meltdown comes in. According to the chatter, and y'all know the chatter be chattering, Diddy thought he was gonna walk in there and people were gonna bow like he was the king of the tier. Instead, they allegedly said, not really, but we will take a plate. And that one moment, that tiny little shift in power, that's allegedly what sent him spiraling. And here's where the story gets delicious, because if you believe the reports, Diddy didn't just help with Thanksgiving. He didn't just contribute. No. The streets are saying he tried to bankroll the whole holiday like he was trying to purchase peace, respect, and maybe a little silence. The gag is, somehow even that didn't buy him the comfort he wanted. It's almost poetic. The man who once controlled entire industries with favors and fear is now allegedly out here buying mashed potatoes to maintain his sanity. But here's the real curiosity gap, the million-dollar question. Why would a man who once controlled entire rooms with a look be out here allegedly buying turkey dinners just to stop people from bothering him? Was Thanksgiving really that stressful? Did the inmates really shake him down? Did he really think a commissary feast was going to fix the energy inside Fort Dix? Or, and here's the spicy version, is Diddy realizing that the power he had on the outside evaporates the second you put on that khaki uniform and lose the entourage? We're going to get into all of that, the rumors, the reactions, the breakdowns, the embarrassment, the food-related psychological warfare, everything. Because whether this story is exaggerated, half-true, or spot-on, the symbolism is wild. Imagine being Diddy, billionaire energy, industry legend, a man who once had grown celebrities sprinting for cheesecake in the middle of the night, only to end up allegedly scrambling to serve cheesecake-adjacent commissary sides to keep the peace. Fort Dix said, "We all equal here, sweetheart," and if the whispers are accurate, that reality hit him like expired gravy with a side of humble pie. So buckle up, because the Thanksgiving tea, it's messy, it's chaotic, it's petty, it's dramatic, and it might just be the clearest sign yet that Diddy is not thriving the way his PR team wants us to believe. And listen the way this story unfolds. You'll see exactly why paying for a Thanksgiving spread might be the least of his worries. Let's get into it. Diddy's whole situation didn't start with Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was just the moment everything boiled over, like an overcrowded pot on a prison hot plate. To really understand why this man is allegedly melting down over mashed potatoes and respect, we gotta rewind and look at how he even ended up in Fort Dix in the first place. Because let's be honest, nobody expected Diddy of all people to be in a khaki uniform, looking like a disgruntled substitute teacher. This is a man who built an entire identity around power, flash, money, control, exclusivity, and image. He's the guy who used to throw parties where celebrities had to RSVP with their souls just to get in the door. And now he's allegedly struggling to keep his sanity during group dining. What got him here is a combination of legal battles, allegations, investigations, and a long trail of people who claimed they'd been waiting for this moment like it was Beyoncé tickets. Over the years, stories piled up, whispers became accusations, accusations turned into lawsuits, lawsuits turned into headlines, and suddenly the man who once strutted through life like he owned the oxygen was standing in front of the court system, hearing the words, "You're being remanded." Then came Fort Dix. And listen, the hilarious part. People said Diddy chose Fort Dix intentionally because he allegedly believed he had connections, protection, or familiar faces who would make his time easier. Baby, who lied to him? Because from what the streets are saying, that plan did not plan. The biggest shock for Diddy wasn't the walls, or the rules, or the routine. It was the power imbalance. Out here, Diddy was basically a walking monarchy. In there, he's inmate number whatever, eating what everyone else eats, living how everyone else lives, and trying to adjust to a world where no one cares about his old life. And the thing about celebrity fallouts is that they hit harder when the person was obsessed with control. Diddy's entire brand was dominance, controlling the narrative, controlling the room, controlling the vibe, and yes, allegedly, controlling the people. But prison eliminates every one of those tools. There's no PR team in the cafeteria. There's no assistant bringing him Fiji water. There's no security clearing hallways so he can walk uninterrupted. So by the time Thanksgiving rolled around, you've got a man who was already dealing with humiliation, isolation, withdrawal from power, and the reality that his old world has evaporated. The meltdown didn't come out of nowhere. It came from weeks of ego starvation. And that's the setup you need to understand. Diddy didn't just walk into Fort Dix. He walked into the first place in decades where nobody cares who he used to be. And that alone is enough to send anybody spiraling. Here's where things get messy, because the prison power struggle is not giving what Diddy thought it was going to give. See, Diddy allegedly walked into Fort Dix imagining he could buy calm, buy silence, buy security, and buy respect, the same way he did on the outside. But baby, prison operates on a whole different economy. And the currency isn't clout, connections, or celebrity. The currency is survival, alliances, favors, and the ability to hold your own without folding like a lawn chair. From the moment he stepped inside, the hierarchy was already watching him, like he was a walking ATM. Not because they respected him, but because they smelled opportunity. Diddy didn't enter as a boss, he entered as a luxury item. Something to be picked apart, negotiated with, or pressured. And that alone shook him to the core. Some inmates allegedly looked at him like he was food, not literally, but financially. In prison, when someone sees you as food, it means you're a resource, a target, a paycheck with legs. And Diddy, with his whole history of flaunting wealth and power, made himself look like a Thanksgiving meal before the holiday even arrived. The struggle really kicked off when he reportedly tried to enforce the persona he had on the outside. That big dog on the block energy, the I make the rules aura, the you move when I say move vibe. Except nobody cared. They weren't impressed by his past, his music catalog, his money, or his legacy. In fact, some found it funny because in prison, trying too hard to look powerful makes you look weak. And the moment people sensed he was trying to cling to status, that's when they allegedly started testing him. Tiny things at first: subtle disrespect, slow compliance, long stares meant to see if he'd fold or fight back. And Diddy, who has always relied on control through intimidation or influence, had none of those tools anymore. He couldn't threaten, he couldn't bargain, he couldn't buy silence, he couldn't hide behind an entourage. And that's when the internal power struggle began. There were reports that certain groups within the prison weren't giving him the respect he expected. Some even allegedly demanded contributions, money, commissary favors in exchange for peace. Not protection. Peace. The type of basic quiet a normal inmate gets for free. So when Thanksgiving rolled around and Diddy decided to bankroll meals, it wasn't just generosity. It was strategy. It was survival. It was an attempt to buy goodwill in a place where goodwill is earned, not purchased. But the worst part, even after the food, some inmates allegedly still weren't sold. They saw right through it. They saw a man terrified of losing every ounce of power he ever had. They saw a man who didn't know how to exist without people bowing down. And when someone smells fear in a place like Fort Dix, the struggle shifts. It becomes less about who Diddy was and more about what they can get out of him now. And that is the real prison power struggle. Not prepared for Thanksgiving in prison is already a weird holiday. It's supposed to be warm, cozy, and filled with family. But instead, you're surrounded by fluorescent lighting, hard plastic trays, and people arguing over who stole whose ramen. But this Thanksgiving, it had a special twist, because allegedly it came with a full Diddy meltdown entree. According to the streets, Thanksgiving was the moment reality smacked him like a tray, fresh out the dishwasher. Diddy reportedly tried to do something big, something boss-like, something that screamed, "I'm still that guy." And in his mind, nothing says power like feeding 1,000 inmates turkey. Except, baby, that's not how it played out. He allegedly wanted praise, he wanted gratitude, he wanted people to whisper, "Wow, Diddy's running the place." But instead, he reportedly got, "Thanks for the food anyway, you got extras," and, "Cool, but this don't mean we bowing down." So now you've got a man who's already sensitive about losing power, realizing even free food couldn't buy the respect he thought he was owed. And that's when the meltdown reportedly began. Not loud, not dramatic, not flipping tables. No worse. The quiet, ego-crushing kind of meltdown where the person realizes, "Oh, I have no leverage here." Sources claimed he was pacing, irritated, frustrated, that everything he used to weaponize, money, access, luxury, doesn't hit the same behind bars. Because here's the thing in prison. Everybody is eating the same bird, and nobody cares who paid for it. And the gag is, some inmates allegedly pressured him more after the meal. Because once you feed 1,000 men, now they know you can do it, and if you can, they want to know what else you can do. Instead of making him look powerful, it allegedly made him look useful. And in prison, that's the last thing you want to look like, unless you're ready to maintain that energy every single day, permanently. The meltdown wasn't just about the food. It was about the realization that he can't buy silence, he can't buy image, he can't buy loyalty, and worst of all, he can't buy status. Not in Fort Dix, Not on Thanksgiving, not ever again unless he becomes the commissary kingpin. Which, let's be real, he's not built for. And reportedly, that's when he started snapping at the people closest to him, the few inmates he thought were cool, friendly, or on his side. But in prison, nobody is on your side for free. Not even on a holiday Thanksgiving. Was the moment the hierarchy made itself clear. He's not the boss. He's not the leader. He's not the feared man he used to be. He's just another inmate with a famous name and an ego that can't fit in his cell. And baby, nothing humbles a man faster than realizing nobody cares who he used to be.